The automotive industry is shifting gears faster than ever, and electrified, low-emission and zero-emission vehicles are driving that change. So how can independent workshops, dealers and repairers adapt to the EV era and stay profitable and relevant? In this episode, we explore this issue. Joining the discussion are three industry experts at the forefront of Queensland's EV transition. Brad Flanagan is General Manager, Industry and Skills at MTA Queensland. Nigel Palmer is Technical Learning and Development Officer at the MTA Institute. And Nathan Gore-Brown is the founder of Test EV, which is focused on the testing and diagnosing of EV batteries, and is also a leading EV consultant. Together, we unpack what it takes for automotive businesses to evolve, from upskilling and equipment investment to safety, diagnostics and customer education, and how embracing EV technology can unlock new opportunities for growth. Right, gentlemen, let's talk about the state of the low-emission electrified market first. So there's lots of electrified vehicles, BEVs, plug-ins, mild hybrids available, and they're just going to keep on coming, I guess. But so what's the state of play currently in Queensland and maybe nationally?
Do you want me to go first?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So look, at the moment, at this point in time now, the market's looking pretty strong. It's been evolving over the last, I'd say, 5 years, Nathan, growing steadily. The last set of data that I looked at, EVs are around 9% of the new car sales at the moment. So they're growing exponentially. The Queensland government data on registrations is showing significant growth. But I think where there's more significant growth is actually in the hybrid market. So,
yeah, definitely. Yeah. You've seen both plug-in hybrids are at about 4%, despite the changes in policy of FBT and so on. And then you've got your mild hybrids, your typical sort of Toyota hybrid type of arrangement, which is now burgeoning on 20% of the market share. And I think that's partly because of all of the different models, not only from Toyota, but you've got Havels and you've got, MGs and whatever else that have all got these sort of things. And you're starting to see the advent of the super plug-in hybrid or the super hybrid, where all these Chinese brands are bringing a small engine, reasonable sized battery, and starting to come in.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, that we were talking about earlier too, is that in terms of what's available in a car yard these days is actually changing fairly rapidly as well, isn't it? Like, the amount of product that is now electrified compared to what was available even 12 months ago has changed dramatically too, hasn't it?
Yeah, we almost see a new car every day that's got that kind of arrangement, or a new vehicle that's come out and it's got multiple powertrains as well. We've got, a plug-in version, a mild hybrid version maybe, and a pure fuel version. So yeah, it's evolving all the time. Yeah. Okay. So and this growth that we're seeing, it's not just powered by public demand. Obviously, the public are very interested in these vehicles, obviously, but there's government, federal and state are still on board with encouraging low emission vehicles, right? So what is there that incentives and grants for buyers and businesses and so on to keep this sort of momentum rolling? Yeah, I think it all ties back to government commitments to emissions reduction, and transport will someday soon become the number one sector for emissions. Electricity will clean up, and then transport will be next. And so policy at the federal government level, so the NEVs, the National Efficient Vehicle Strategy and policy is bringing in the need to have cleaner vehicles, more efficient vehicles, which is driving the manufacturers. There's the policy that we've had around for a little while now for FBT, fringe benefits tax, to be zero on now only battery electric vehicles, but before that it was plug-in hybrids too. If you're buying a full electric vehicle and you're not using that particular policy or not using that FBT being zero, you're kind of mad. You need to package it into a novated lease, or you need to package it into a business ownership, and then save the tax, because you're saving somewhere in the order of a quarter to a third of the vehicle price. So all of those things are driving that, on top of more models, which we talked about, and then people wanting them. Yeah,
and look, I think don't discount also the fact that the federal government has now heavily incentivised solar batteries. Home batteries. Solar panels on roofs. So
for years,
that drives decision making too. Because if people go, well, if I buy an EV, I get the tax concession through the FBT, but I've also got my fuel is coming straight onto my roof and into my battery. That's going to drive consumer behaviour as well.
Given Queensland is the highest penetration of solar of anywhere in the world, that's become really natural to us. Sometimes you think of Australia as being like a run-on diesel and the smell of an oily rag kind of place. We actually run on solar, as a country, and so it's not a far walk. You're right.
Well, okay, so that's that kind of, we're talking about buyers there, but we're talking about businesses. What sort of grants and help is there for small businesses or medium-sized businesses that want to get involved with electrified vehicles? Is there stuff out there that they can?
Yeah, I think each individual state seems to have different things. There's some federal stuff. I think you mentioned before, Brad, that there was a new grant for businesses to add a charger to their business, which I think is something at the federal levels as a federal government program. I think, jumping on something like that, getting a grant, I think is somewhere in the order of $3,000, which should cover the addition of a charger or two in most workshop type environments. Amazing. That would be fantastic to just get you on board. And other states have got different things for some vehicles. You've clearly got some subsidy for some of the training as well. So
yeah, that's 100% right. I mean, just in terms of that subsidy for the charging stations as well, that was we put that in our bulletin in September. So we'll continue to highlight to all of our members when anything like that comes online, government grants, federal government grants, state government grants around this electrification. We'll certainly put that in our bulletins and put it in our magazines as well. Just a bit of a plug for our for our comms there. But yeah, you're 100% right, Nathan. I think there are plenty of opportunities there for our businesses to connect in with that sort of stuff and get themselves ahead of the curve.
Yeah. And so, okay, so buyers, and there's stuff for buyers, there's stuff for businesses, but what about generally in terms of things like, when we talk about things like infrastructure? So, I mean, we recently there was an announcement that the federal government's going to put in 40 million into, I think, roadside charging or something along those lines.
Curbside charging.
Curbside charging. Thank you. Yeah. So there's still a big push for infrastructure in Queensland and nationally.
Yeah, there definitely is. There's still a lot in the pipeline as well. There was some programs that were put together even in the last federal government round that still haven't completely flown through and haven't been installed, because sometimes there's delays in fast charging being installed and connections to grid and all that sort of business. So there's those that are already in the pipeline. There's new programs that are being picked up. Again, New South Wales leading some of this stuff, but also across Queensland where curbside charging is becoming available. Even new systems in streets where you don't have off-street parking, where some jurisdictions are starting to look at things where you can put a groove in the path and then a cover over the top of it so that there's no trip hazard, providing a little bit of a permit or a license. There's all of these sorts of things. Even recently there's one where there's a boom that goes out over the top of the pathway, so that again the cable will run over the top and then be out of the way of everybody and not impede. So for those that can't have roads off-street parking, but Queensland's a big place. We've generally got a lot of off-street parking, and then infrastructure is your PowerPoint at the wall or throw a charger on your wall for about $1,500.
Can I just ask another question? Sorry, I'm going to ask Nathan a question here and potentially Nigel as well. So yeah, look, I think this is just a personal view. I've got no evidence to back this up, but our big energy companies, right, are losing customers because of solar and things like that, and people putting panels on. So they're looking for opportunities, right? So I can see that curbside charging is a great opportunity for energy companies to stay relevant and that sort of thing in the marketplace. So the other question I was going to ask, which I've sort of forgotten, I know what it was now, bi-directional charging. So you guys are the techos. Yeah.
Are you talking vehicle to grid or vehicle to home?
Vehicle to home, yeah.
Vehicle to home's quite interesting. It's been around for a few years now. Essentially what that is mainly aimed at is not so much running your house and going off-grid with your car. It's more a case of the emergency situation. It's more along the lines of, for argument's sake, we had the cyclone a year or so ago. They're all through Facebook and stuff like that. There were these people up there skiting that, I ran my house. We had a blackout and I ran my house off my car for 2 or 3 days and that sort of stuff. There was one guy down the road from me who's got a BYD Shark and he's run his house off his car and his neighbour's house off his car at the same time. This sort of thing. That's where your vehicle to home comes in. Vehicle to grid's a different beast again. That's where you actually take the power from your car and you sell it back onto the grid, the same as your solar and that sort of thing. I really can't see the sense in it personally. That's my personal view, not anybody else's. But I can't see the sense in that because you're taking power out of your car that you've got to put back into your car to drive somewhere.
How far down the road are we towards vehicle to grid? I mean,
vehicle to grid's actually in other countries. I'm not too sure how far Australia is down the line.
We've made big strides in the last maybe 12 months on vehicle to grid. Yeah. I use the concept of vehicle to grid about 6 slices of Swiss cheese, and you need all the holes to line up for it to actually work. One of them is having the ability to actually do it, and that legislation, those standards are now in place. So the first slice is in place. The next one is having equipment that can do it at the house side, if you like. They're starting to become in place, but they have to be registered by each individual jurisdiction and provider. And so that's interesting. Then the next thing you need to do is have a vehicle that works with it. And we've got a VHS and Betamax kind of fight coming up with, do I provide that energy back via AC or DC side? So if you ask Polestar, it's AC. If you ask Volkswagen, it's DC. We're going to have an interesting setup there. That then tells you how expensive it is. The next Swiss cheese is your car at home? Does any of this make sense financially? You know, and you've got all these different elements. So if your car's not at home, to be plugged in, to be used for the time of day, to then get value out of selling that energy back, because that's the only reason you do it, to help balance the grid out with the wholesale market. And if you're not going to make money, and it's not as competitive as having one of these new battery grants that's coming for our houses, which you can get basically, $200 a kilowatt hour at the moment, why bother? And so I think I personally think, to a degree, with yourself, there's more hype than what's going to happen. And V2G is actually holding people back from buying an EV. I did a survey about 12 months ago. 25% of people that responded on a Facebook survey on a very large EV community site said that they were holding back from the purchase of an EV because they were waiting for V2G.
Wow.
I think they'll be waiting a lot longer before it becomes mainstream.
Yeah, right.
And which is, I think, a shame for people adopting. We could have 25% more cars on the road today if people realised that it wasn't quite the utopia it sounds.
Having said that, though, I think Nigel's example of the cyclone experience, I think, look, during that cyclone, when power's out for 4 or 5 days...
for some parts of the town, some parts of southeast Queensland was the case.
Well, that's just it. There was also a section that I saw where they were contemplating the vehicle to grid, as in the case of the cyclone, was... when the power went out, all the vehicles that are vehicle to grid plugged into the cars and that sort of stuff would power the grid again. So you'd be powering up.
I don't think that works like that.
That'd be rather scary.
Yeah.
But this was a thought process kicking around the place.
There's cut-offs at the house and stuff. But I think there's also one step back from vehicle to grid, vehicle to home, there's vehicle to load. And that's where actually a lot of the people are able to temporarily provide energy to run the freezer and so on. And that's... a lot more vehicles have got that. It's becoming really, really easy. It's quite cheap to access. And whilst it's a limited amount of power, if you really need to, you can plug your vehicle into parts of your house.
That's it.
And get a little bit of energy to keep the essentials running. Yeah. And I think there's actually a lot of sense in that.
Yeah, well, that's right. And I agree because, when we've had cyclones or floods or whatever else, Bunnings get overrun with people trying to buy little generators. and you get
Got
that
a little generator sitting in the driveway.
it's sitting on the driveway, and the little generator is actually only able to power your fridge and your freezer and a couple of appliances at any given time anyway.
Yeah, and you get 15 amps, 3.3 kilowatts out of most of these V12 systems,
Yep.
the vehicle-to-load systems out of most EVs that are available today, which is substantial.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so we know then that the EV market is growing. We know there's lots of options, lots of things that these cars could be used for, all that sort of stuff. So you're an automotive business owner. This has to be technology that you're going to consider for your business in the future, right? No matter if you've been in 20 years or you're just starting out, this is something that you have to think about, right?
Oh, sorry.
I would say definitely. You go for
yeah,
it.
most definitely. I think we've been talking to our members since 2023 about business transitions and about saying, look, whether you're a 35-year-old to 40-year-old just starting in your own business and come out of your time 10 years ago and that sort of thing, or you're 55 plus or whatever else, your business is your basically it's your cash cow. It's as simple as that. So you need to be thinking, how does my business generate as much income as possible, right? That's why you're in business. You're in business to make money.
Yeah.
I say to our members, and not everybody is convinced that EVs are necessarily the be all and end all and 100% the future. But as I say to our businesses, look at it from the point of view of, these things are going to generate income for you. They are big income generators, and think of it from that perspective. And I know Nathan had some really good points that he raised in some of our workshops we delivered at AutoCare about that.
Yeah, I think you've got to think about the sort of income streams that you've got today in a workshop, and then how will they, start thinking forward 5 and 10 years with your business planning of how will they change.
Yeah.
So you won't be doing as many as there are more EVs coming onto the marketplace, depending if they've got a motor or not. Are they going to be doing oil changes? Will they need the servicing at the same sort of rate? But then there'll be other things that change. EVs generally, due to the torque and due to a little bit to do with the weight of the vehicle, they wear out bushes earlier and suspension components. You start to sort of flip the mix of what you're starting to do work on, and then being ready to be able to take advantage of that.
Yep.
There's also going to be a behaviour of consumers. People won't know what to do. There won't be as much backyard mechanical kind of activity, I can imagine, that might currently be the case. And so you'll start to see more people bring vehicles in. And I think all of those sorts of things is where you need to be planning your future.
Yeah, and I like some of the narrative that I've heard you speak at, particularly at AutoCare, which is saying, when the car comes in for that simple job, it's there. You can put it on the hoist. You can look for other things, the value adds and that sort of stuff.
Absolutely. And, mechanics generally who are running workshops, they aren't necessarily fully in the mindset of upsell and would you like fries with that? The mechanics first, as I was, and then you might start thinking a bit more with a bit of a marketing brain. But we don't typically have that approach. You go to a dealer and you go into the service department and you talk to a service advisor who might not necessarily be technical or as technical. Their first thing is, would you like fries with that? And I think, particularly for our small and medium workshops, which, are a major bread and butter of the MTAQ membership, thinking about how they can, offer a set of tyres because that's what the consumers come in on, but then have a look at other bits and pieces and offer those, hey, you might needs. And having that on the forefront of your mind. And with EVs, those might needs are things like suspension, things like cabin filters. There's also bits and pieces around battery health. There's also bits and pieces about even accessories if you're into that sort of thing. Some of these vehicles don't come with stuff that people might need. I think about the front hood, the frunk of a Tesla. You fit a front kit, and then all of a sudden it's electrical and mechanical, and rather than being mechanical. And those are areas where people can start leaning into.
Yeah, definitely, and I think that's the opportunity, isn't it? EVs, are a risk on one hand, but they're a massive opportunity on the other hand.
It's just change.
Yeah, that's exactly right, and also in the hybrid space too. I mean.
Yeah, definitely. I think being the full bottle on how hybrid battery servicing needs to be. You know, a lot of them are simply air cooled, so having the ability to run through the process safely, to do that filtration clean out. That's one thing. That's one of the servicing elements. And then even being, you know, where would you go if a customer came in with a Duff battery on a, you know, Corolla hybrid? What's your sourcing? Where are you going to get those parts? How much is it? Because typically, my understanding is it's actually not that expensive. It's not that much labour, and as long as you know what you're doing and you've been trained, you can do it fairly well, and it's quite a lucrative bit of service.
Yeah, so Jonathan, I think in terms of the workshops we've been delivering to, have really looked at, and part of the role that my team plays at MTAQ is that business planning, workforce planning. So all of this stuff that Nathan's talking about now, you know, there will be a training element, and it might be, and I know some of our members have spoken about it, about, you know, training my my current techs, you know, around that kind of ability to drive that customer service and do you want fries with that? So you know, there's some training elements there. A lot of our techs have already got that skill anyway. So, but some of them, yeah, there might be some short courses that the MTAI, for instance, can drive, which are about trying to change that mindset. But also, I think the technical stuff, Nigel, there's quite a bit in that space too around this emerging technology too, isn't there?
There's quite a lot out there with EVs in general. As Nathan said before, these vehicles are heavier. They operate the same but different. So you're going to have different oil change distances, times, etc., and that sort of thing there. However, because of the weight, because of the torque, as you were saying, things are going to wear differently. It's already starting to come to light on a few different manufacturers that we've been monitoring and that sort of thing, that the bushes are wearing sooner, the ball joints are wearing sooner, brakes are different. Tyres are now, if you look at the tyre companies, they're bringing out EV-specific tyres. Yeah. They've made them quieter with higher silicon contents in the rubber and et cetera. So there's all these different things that these people can go out and look at and
There's
understand.
noise and vibration stuff as well.
Oh,
you
big
know,
time.
I've got this creak in the dashboard. You know, every mechanic loves to hear that. But you're going to hear it more often because electric vehicles are quieter, and so you hear these things more often.
Oh, it definitely
Drives me nuts in my car.
I fully understand where you're coming from. There's that having driven EVs before, and you're driving along, you're like, what was that? Where you wouldn't hear it in an ICE vehicle for the plain and simple reason you got the buzzing and the humming and the tyre noise,
the
and
vibrations.
all that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
it just masks all that sort of stuff.
So look, if you are considering as a business to get into this stuff, where do you start? What do you look at first? What considerations do you make before you take that step? What's the first step that you take?
That great question. We've got resources which we've delivered through our business planning workshops, right? So we can walk through with a business, you know, how to develop a business plan, and that business plan looks at workforce, but it also looks at the infrastructure you might need, the tooling you might need, and all that sort of stuff. So there's definitely an element there. And look, business planning can be as big or as little as you want it to be. It can be a business plan on a page, or you can take a completely deep dive and develop a 50-page document, or anywhere in between. We would suggest to all of our businesses, get yourself a business plan on a page as a minimum. So you know what direction you're going in, and you know the skills and the workforce you're going to need later on. And then you can start to connect with us. If it is around skills and workforce, you can talk to people like Nigel who've got the full bottle on all the training products available for your workforce, whether that be, like I said, a short course in customer services for all of your staff, whether it be a full deep dive into, depower and reinitialize, diagnose and repair, or whether it's just at the start of your journey, you need the micro-credential around the safety and awareness. There's a raft of products and things available. That's where I think the starting point is, and you know, like the other guys, I'm sure I've got some comments on that as well.
Just before going into sort of some of that deeper training stuff, which is really important to explore, I think, you know, it's not, if you don't have a plan, exactly. If you don't know what you want to achieve,
100%.
And I think as a shop, if you're starting to sit there and look at the brave future and say, I don't want to touch any of that stuff, that's okay.
Well, that's a business plan.
That can be a plan.
That's a business plan in itself. Like, I'm going to retire in 5 years. I don't really want to get into this. That's okay. our advice to our membership around that is have a plan of attack around that. Are you going to sell the business?
Just going to shut it down.
Or are you just going to shut it down? Like, what is your plan?
Yeah.
If you've got a plan, then you can start to position yourself and start to work out, well, what do I need to make that come to fruition?
Yeah.
What do they say? Nobody plans to fail. People just fail to plan, you know.
Or there's all the P's, you know.
That's right.
There's that one too. But I think that's a really important part. Where am I? Where do I think I want to go? What do I need to do that? And then what sort of things would I need to hook into?
Definitely. Like, you need to look at, for starters, it's definitely your business plan. But then take a step back and look at your facility that you're actually looking at. Then from there, you've got to take into safety. Safety is a big one with high voltage vehicles and that sort of thing. Where are you going to have your high voltage bay in your workshop? Is there enough space there for it? Can I get a charger put into that bay? Is there space on the wall for a toolbox? Is there space on the wall for all the bits and pieces that I need for this? Then from there, my workers, what do I do with them? What do I do with myself? If it's a small workshop with, say, half a dozen people, I'm on the floor working, fixing cars and that sort of stuff. I've got to skill myself up. Then from there, I've also got to skill up my workers and that sort of stuff. You'd be looking at,
Sorry, Jonathan, before we move on from this, can I just raise another thing? We've focused in the conversation mostly around mechanical repairs and all that sort of thing. So our collision shops are probably going to be the first group that are going to...
Definitely. That's another side of things. And when it comes down to your collision shops, 9 times out of 10, they've got a person in the front who does the quoting and that sort of thing. You'd be training those people, if we're going to go into the training side of things, you'd be giving them an awareness course as in our micro-credential or something along those lines. So they know what to touch, what not to touch, and if I do touch that, what might happen. Then from there, once you actually get into the panel work, spray painting work side of things, you need to know the limits that you can take these vehicles to. What should I be doing before I actually even pull the vehicle into the workshop? I'm
going to leap in here because I want to ask you a question specifically around this. So there are different requirements then I'm picking up for different sectors. So if you're a mechanical workshop, is it different? You need a different setup, you need different equipment, to different training, to a paint and panel, to if you're just a tyre shop, you're changing tyres and brakes, everything. There's different requirements to your different businesses.
Yes and no.
Right.
Now this is where it gets interesting. Once we start getting in, if we get into a paint and panel shop, the manufacturers come into this quite heavily. They will have recommendations of how they want their vehicles stored.
Yeah.
Some manufacturers will say, okay, as soon as it comes into the panel shop, we want the battery taken out of it and it's stored in its own separate little box over here.
Yeah.
I don't know how often that happens now, but that is a recommendation in a couple of workshop manuals that I've read, more than a couple actually. Okay. From there, you also have the other ones that say, okay, it must be depowered. Yeah. You have other ones that just say, she's apples, park her up the corner. But at the same time, as I said before, you want your person out the front to have an awareness of EV. You want the guys in the workshop who in the panel shop to have at least those guys should have a depower underneath their belt. Not so much. I wouldn't go much further than a depower. Because
that would be similar to a mechanical workshop as well. The first step is needing that depower module, understanding how to make vehicles safe.
Definitely. And when to make it safe.
And when to make it safe. And I think that's something that I've noticed in this early days as we're starting to suss it out is like, when should I actually get in and disturb the vehicle to make it safe? And it obviously depends on what you're going to play with next.
Definitely.
Where do you need to go next and the type of work that you're doing. And that's what you learn in the depower course, right?
Definitely.
So look, again, I'll come back to the different sectors again. So if you're a tyre or underbody shop, you need a certain level of understanding and a certain level of equipment, a certain level of training. If you're a farm machinery repairer, presumably you'd need some sort of level of understanding and equipment at your shop.
Yep.
Certainly mechanical, obviously, and certainly paint and panel. But What about towing companies that were also
Towing
members of
companies,
MTQ?
definitely.
All of these. Does everybody need to have?
Can I just address the towing companies? We actually did meet with RACQ, Marcello and I. And the towing companies, it's the awareness and it's the safety element. And there are products out there that TAFE Queensland have put on the market, which Nigel has tested actually, and very, very good product. And we've already
Focused on that cohort.
And we've sort of given TAFE a good plug on that and got that out into our marketplace and said, towing companies, you need to be across this. But I'll let Nigel take over the rest because there are different varieties there, and
there's different levels, and this is the whole thing. Anybody who touches a vehicle virtually has to do something along these lines.
Yeah.
I worked for a manufacturer recently where to fit a tow bar you had to do a depower,
Right.
because you had to disturb high voltage cabling
Yeah.
to fit the tow bar wiring.
Yeah.
So this was one of the things that these guys stipulated.
Yeah.
And it was quite interesting. We had dealerships up in arms and all sorts of bits and pieces. So like, oh my God, we've got to train these people in this, and we didn't think in this along lines. So that's that. But if we get back into our paint and panel, your panel guys, as I said before, they need to know how to depower. The depower course itself that these people should be doing, as paint guys as well in this case, should be by a reputable RTO. For the plain and simple reason, I've heard people out there are going out and running around and it's like, oh, here's a quick buck and we'll rock into this dealership or into this place and go, okay, I'll give you depower in 2 hours and I'll give you the little certificate and everybody's happy, joyous and smiling and that sort of stuff. Having written the course, having trained the course, having done so much around depower and actually watched how to depower a car evolve over the last 5 years or even more.
Yeah.
There's no way on this planet you can get through it in 2 hours.
Yeah. There's no shortcuts here, right?
There's no shortcuts, especially when it comes to safety.
Yeah.
The depower course, ETH 101, covers so much in safety. It's not just how to unplug a car and plug it back in again or power it up and depower it and that sort of thing. It actually goes into safety and what you should be wearing, what you should be doing, all the signage, all the bits and pieces and that sort of stuff, which are actually covered by an Australian standard.
Yeah. And the Australian standard also provides you insight on when to do the course, the depower as well, because I think there is a perception out there that you look at the vehicle, you have to depower it, like literally look at it from 10 metres away, and that's not true. But there's a point at which you do need to depower it, and going through that course provides you an understanding of where that line is. And I think from a practical point of view, if I was running a workshop and I'm thinking about all this sort of stuff, is the amount of time and general inconvenience that is around doing depower if you need to do it on some vehicles, is understanding when do I do it and when do I not. And I think that's an important part of the process too.
But not only when, but also why.
And well, the when is based on the why.
Yeah.
And there is an element there of putting yourself in some level of further risk or safety issue if you are actually depowering a vehicle you didn't need to. So don't get yourself into a space that you shouldn't need to. Don't do stuff you don't need to do.
Can I just pick up also, I just wanted to make a point around Nigel's comments around why it's important for accredited training. We've also been on a long journey with regulators and so forth. And really the critical piece to to ensure quality and to ensure compliance and that sort of thing is accredited training. There's lots of vendor training out there as well, which we're not saying, from an association's point of view, we think vendor training is really important, particularly where there's gaps in training packages and that sort of thing. But when it comes to depower and reinitialise, there is no gap in the training package, and the accredited training has the robustness and it has the support of regulators as well. The other thing about the depower training, we've been working with all of the training providers across Australia that deliver this accredited training, and we've set up what we call RTO guidelines, which is a standard that all the RTOs, all the big RTOs, Kangan in Victoria, TAFE New South Wales, the South Australians, the Western Australians, the MTA networks. We've all looked at this and we've all taken a deep dive into it, and we all agree on what the standard looks like. So that's the important part too. So if you do the accredited training through a reputable training provider, they've all signed up to do it properly. And that's a really important point around this.
Really
Definitely. What we're also talking about with this accredited training, as I said, 1-2 hours just doesn't cut it. You're looking at least a day to possibly a day and a half's worth of work to actually do this job properly, to actually go through and make sure this person knows that they can prove that they're going to do the job properly and safely. We go through the safety side of things, the signage, the gloves. The gloves can be very controversial at times and that sort of stuff on when to test them, when not to test them and all that sort of stuff. But the gloves, everything that you should be doing. The only thing that concerns me is as time goes on, people are going to get complacent and start getting hurt. We can't afford to be complacent around this. It's just not on the table. We've just got to keep being safe.
Yeah. Okay, safety, very important, obviously. And I'm picking up here that there are levels of but equipment and layouts for different businesses and so on. So, but again, if I'm a business and I'm going to step into this industry, into the electrified sector, what sort of investment am I going to be expected to make if I'm?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, essentially, to work on an EV, your tooling has to be Category 3, 1,000 volts.
Right.
Everything that you get, your tooling will have an insulative coating on it, which is rated to 1,000 volts. Your multimeters will be Category 3, 1,000 volt multimeters. Everything is way over the top. And that's being nice about it. However, at the same time, the reason why it's up there is we're getting trucks now and some vehicles that are running 800 volts.
Sure, yeah.
Whereas if you select, I'm only working on this vehicle here that's doing 400 volts and if 500 volt gloves are good, then you're faced with an 800 volt vehicle. You're leaving yourself at a little bit of risk. But your tooling, you'll have mats, you'll have tooling, you'll have multimeters, you'll have all these other bits and pieces thrown in your face. Essentially, right from the outset, personally, you need a set of gloves. Depending on how you've been trained or what manufacturer you're working around, you can have either just the insulative gloves on, or you can go the 3-glove rule. The 3-glove rule is a cotton glove covered by an insulative glove, followed by a leather glove. And some manufacturers stipulate that. Right. To work on our car, we must use this. There's that side of things. Then I must admit, you'd also need the signage that's got to go around the vehicle if you're going to do depowers, that sort of stuff. Pardon me. Places like I'm going to do a plug here for a guy, which is the EFO over here at Compton Road. He does kits. You can walk in there, buy a kit from him. You'll have everything. Right from the outset.
So what do you get in this kit? You get gloves?
You get gloves, you get a face shield, you get a floor, an insulated floor mat, you get a box to put it in, you get all the signage that you need. You get everything bar the multimeter. He doesn't want to put a multimeter in it in case you want to go and buy a Fluke or some other brand or something like that. But the kit is exactly what you need to kick off.
Yeah, well, okay. So without plugging his product, but that sounds to be sort of the very basic entry level stuff that you would need, right? So what's the coin that you'd have to spend to get that?
What was that?
I said, what's the rub?
What's the rub? I really don't know. I must admit, I haven't priced it lately. Last time I priced it was around about $2,500.
Is that so? I mean, that to me seems like a really quite a reasonable investment to get to step into. I mean, am I wrong? That seems pretty reasonable.
It's acceptable.
Yeah.
I think the only thing he doesn't cover is the exclusion zone. And now, with the exclusion zone, I can see Nathan shaking his head here.
You get some barrier tape and bits and pieces, and some. You can do this.
You can make your own very, very basic one. I understand, and I'm with you 100%.
Yeah.
As long as you keep people away from the vehicles.
Well, yeah.
And we've been keeping people out of our workshops that aren't authorised people for decades now. When I was an apprentice, maybe less so, but these days we're pretty good at putting the chain up across our bay, and then the next thing is about our team inside the the business that knows that we're doing something a bit special here and that we should have some things out.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to get to the safety aspect of it, but in terms of just the pure investment, you're talking from as little as $3,000 up to presumably a real full-on,
like anything, the whole entire.
Yeah.
You know, there's things that you might need that are physical. That if you were going to pull batteries out a lot, you'd probably want one of the sort of. It's almost like a transmission hoist type or transmission remover, but it's for a battery, so it's larger and it spreads the weight a bit more. Yeah. Those sorts of, like a
scissor table,
like a scissor table, exactly. Yeah. You might need to go there, but you've got to ask yourself, when am I going to do that kind of work?
Yeah.
You know. Invariably, not very often.
Yeah.
Similar sorts of things. So I think you're cutting a cloth accordingly to the work that you're doing, and considering the types of servicing or repairs that you're up to.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you start off with your kit, which is your basic kit, and once you, how can I put it? Your job's coming in the front door, stipulated or asked for it, you add to your kit. Yeah. And keep building on it.
It's a bit like when you buy your tent for camping and then you buy your fridge and everything else. But I think the other thing too, that the signage as well and a couple of other things, but it's laid out in the standard, in the AS standard.
Definitely.
That's right. And I think it's probably and MTAQ is here to support anyone who wants to get into that environment. And also, I think the other thing too is that in the setup, like we're focused on safety at the moment, but there's also, we spoke very briefly earlier about access to grants to buy chargers and things like that. So if you want to put a charging station into your workshop, MTA can help you find out where there's information around accessing grants, and you might be able to get a grant for about, I think we said around about $3,000,
which should cover you for a decent sort of charger, or maybe even two.
Yeah. So actually, it's a reasonable, not weight around your neck type of investment to get started.
Yeah, I think it probably starts with doing the depower course, learning about all the gear that you need, in greater detail, and the standard that goes with it, and then start building from there.
And Jonathan's right, the depower unit is subsidised, is it not?
I believe it is.
Yeah, I think it is.
So government is putting some money behind this so that businesses don't find themselves too much out of pocket. There will have to be some skin in the game, no question, there always is. But there is some subsidisation around there to try and make it more cost effective and encourage more people to get it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so we know that there's equipment requirements and that might not be quite as taxing financially as some people might think. But in terms of training, we did touch on this, that there was a sort of minimum requirement, but we could go right through to apprenticeships and all the way upskill to to the greatest level. So could you talk us through what sort of training options there are?
Definitely. Basic people, your service advisors, your detailers, service managers, the whole works and jerks, they can come in or they can log on, I should say, and do a free micro credential with that the MTAQ's put forward. It covers light vehicle, but there's a light vehicle version, there's a heavy vehicle version, there's a motorcycles version, there's all these there's all these micro credentials there that give them the awareness of what to touch, what not to touch. Yes, we get into the jargon a bit and that sort of stuff, but it's there. If you want to go deeper, and this is where we start to get to the techs on the floor, or the panel beaters, the spray painters, and those sort of guys, even the in some cases possibly even your tow truck drivers, you do your depower. We're doing a depower for the police in a couple of weeks' time, so they're safe out there, which is a definite plus. Then from there, we then can go into it even further. We can do the servicing skill set, maintain and service skill set, which goes through and does 4 units, which is ETH 101, 102, 103, and 107. That there is for, just as the name says, maintaining and servicing EVs.
Yeah.
The next skill set after that is the diagnose and repair skill set. All up, there are 9 units in the EV range.
Yeah.
This here covers off the final 5.
Right.
So you've got these 2. Once you have both those 2 under your belt, you're pretty well qualified. If, however, you're just starting out and you're a young guy just come out of high school and that sort of stuff, and you're going into a dealership or even into any workshop that's worth their mustard, you can do an EV apprenticeship, which covers all this and more.
But presumably there are elements of, if you're not doing an EV specific apprenticeship, regular apprenticeships will
Yeah.
have EV relevant
Depending on-
modules within them now, or
That depends on the RTO,
oh, okay,
on the provider. I know MTAQ in a lot of cases now is actually putting in the depower unit as a part of the first
Which is
year or
great,
second
right?
year. It's
Yeah,
absolutely stunning.
Yeah.
It shows that we're moving forward and trying to remain constant and
Yeah.
up to date and that sort of thing, which is absolutely great. I'm stoked with that.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to be a part of a company that is that smart. However, if you're not getting that, you can also come afterwards, or your employer can say, you can go to your employer and say, hey, I'd like to do this,
yeah,
and see how you go. Or you can come to MTAQ by yourself or any RTO and say, I want to do this. However, do your homework, do your due diligence, and actually make sure you're getting what you're paying for.
yeah.
Or not paying for, as the case may be.
Yeah, look, that's exactly right. But yeah, Nigel's right. And look, you know, again, a plug for TAFE Queensland too. They are right across that space as well. Between TAFE Queensland and MTAQ, you've got a range of options there. There are other providers in the marketplace, but Nigel's 100% correct. Do your due diligence, get online, check out who's delivering what, and make some choices there. But I think the other important element to talk about there is that through our conversations with government, so MTAQ is very much engaged in conversations with government, particularly at state level, around pathways for people, subsidies for training and that sort of thing. There is a pathway there if you're a light vehicle mechanic. There is a pathway there, or a heavy vehicle mechanic, you know, to go along and become an EV mechanic. There is a pathway there, largely subsidised, and you know, and it means that you will have to invest some money, as well as obviously your time. There will be some commitment that you'll have to provide, but it is heavily subsidised by government, so that that you're not having to invest, you know, tens of thousands of dollars or anything like that into that pathway. It's likely to be more like hundreds of dollars.
Yeah, right.
So it's definitely something that any worker who wants to, any worker or any employer who has a vision for their workers to get on board in that journey, there is a pathway there for you. Reach out to MTAQ. We can put you in touch with either our training provider, TAFE Queensland, or anybody else that's providing that pathway in your region.
Okay, great. Okay, so I'm a small business. I've heard this information, and I'm thinking, yes, that's what I want to do, and I want to be involved. And now I want to understand. I really want to understand what sort of the potential, once I've got all this knowledge, is. Now, Nathan, I know we've talked before about your particular product, the Avalue battery testing system, and what potential pathways for revenue that could entail. But what other things? I know we've touched on it briefly earlier, but what other sort of potential big revenue pathways are we talking about if you're a small or medium-sized mechanical business, paint panel, dealership, whatever? What have we got if we move into EV?
I think there's
Or electrified, sorry.
Oh, electrified. So
Yeah.
there's a few key aspects there. So if we think about vehicles with a plug on, because that number's in my head, you got 380,000 of those on our roads in Australia now, about 2% of the population today, and about 90,000 of those are older than 3 years.
Yeah.
So that used car market, those starting to come out of warranty vehicles, they're starting to grow in a volume. So that's the first thing, is like, what am I going to service? A whole bunch of vehicles out there. If we think about mild hybrids, you're talking about, you know, electrified cars. You know, Prius has been around since 2005 or thereabouts. There's plenty of old bangers around, but there's also lots and lots of newer ones as well. But again, you know, hundreds and hundreds of thousands, probably well over 1 million now, that would be available to be worked on. So there's definitely that. So the next thing is, okay, what services do those vehicles need? You know, as I mentioned before, you know, even knowing a pathway of how to procure, once you've been trained, how to procure a battery to replace for a mild hybrid, you know, an older Prius or Corolla or something like that, Camry, those sorts of things. Understanding where would I buy it, how would I do it, ahead of the question coming up. I think that's important. I think, you know, considering the kinds of services that the public want, so that's where I've gone into it with the EV battery health testing. People might want to buy a used EV, but they're concerned about the battery health. So then, whether it's the dealer or a workshop or an auction house, having a test for a vehicle when they're going through that sales process helps the consumer be comfortable to buy it. And that might fit within your workshop doing that sort of work. But alongside that, it's great things like, again, being ready to do a cabin filter change on a Tesla, for instance. The only servicing you really need to bother with, maybe once or twice a year, and if you ask Tesla, and look, it doesn't take long to do, but it's a little mechanical. It's a little hard to get to. It's not just a simple pull out and put in. So there's a piece of work there. Yeah. And when you've got the vehicle in the shop, you're walking around it. Oh, it needs some tyres, or when was the last time you got a wheel alignment? And that comes back to would you like fries with that? Would you like a battery health test? So this is where I think shops can start to consider what are even the packages they can pull together, as well as what are the typical servicing pathways that those sorts of vehicles, these electrified vehicles, would be, and get ready for it. Like get not just safety ready and skilled ready, but also procurement ready. Marketing ready.
Yeah.
Tell the world that you want to do these things. Get yourself behind a program that might support that.
Yeah. Okay. On that very subject. Okay. So now you're all in. Yeah. So there's a business you're all in.
You're going to do this.
You've got all this sorted out, and you do in fact want to say, right, hello the world. I'm ready to take on your EV work, or electrified vehicle work, I should say. So, what do you do now? I know that there's a couple of programs that people are offering, and MTA Queensland actually has one now too called EV Ready. So perhaps we could talk a little bit about what that is and how do you get on it and what it's.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I think EV Ready was really born out of that conversation with government, where the recommendations from that electrical safety review. Licensed electrical workers will be working on EVs, and we pushed back quite strongly, but we advocated to government that this is the work of this industry, and through developing EV Ready, it's really a signal to government, but also to consumers that no, these workshops are safe, they're reliable, they're properly kitted out, and that the services they provide are compliant. That's really what the signal of EV Ready is. Businesses who participate will get a sign, an EV Ready sign, but we'll also be advertising, through our comms, but also through our big billboard out here at 8 Mile Plains. Go and talk to, if you've got an electric vehicle or electrified vehicle, talk to an EV Ready provider. Talk to an EV Ready, business, because they are the full bottle, they're ready to go, and they're a reliable and safe service.
And so if you wanted to do that, if you're a member or not a member, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
It's available to the whole industry. Yeah, that's true. We've got some communications on our website. You can go and register your interest through an EOI, and MTAQ will be back in touch with you about how you become an EV Ready provider.
And can you just touch on what are those requirements? There are some requirements.
There are some requirements. I think Nigel has gone into detail about what safety means and things like that. It is effectively following the AS standard, having the right workplace setup, which includes all your signage, your firefighting equipment as well, all of your tools and equipment, your safety procedures, but also that all of your staff have the depower, or not all of your staff, sorry, the staff that are working on vehicles have the depower unit as well. Yeah. So it's not an onerous or an over onerous process to become EV Ready. We have a full sort of welcome pack which goes through all that detail.
All right. Well, look, I think if we can summarise our conversation today, it seems to me that no matter what sector of the industry you're in, you've got to be looking at electrified vehicles in some form or other. It's reasonable to get involved in terms of financially. You can step into it without breaking the bank. Training is available and reasonable, and even government backed in some cases. There are grants. There are MTA Queensland can help out with business planning and help you get through that and help you with the training options. So how do we summarise this? Just get stuck in.
Well, I think the first thing I'd say is people say EVs are coming.
Yeah.
I'm saying EVs are here.
Yes.
and they're not going away. Okay. I think that's the first thing, and we've got to get ourselves as an industry past that concept of it's going to go. If I just hold my breath long enough, it's not going away. And then the other piece there is there's this perception, or has been for years, and it's probably been a reasonable perception up until a couple of years ago, that we're not ready. The collective we are not ready. And my feeling is, with what you see with the MTAQ and the rest of the industry, that Queensland is ready.
Yeah.
You've just got to go out and reach at it. That's what I think.
Yeah, and I'd add to that the point that I've flagged a couple of times during this conversation. Look, it's a business opportunity. It's an opportunity to make money. And it is still, the space is still completely owned by this industry, and it's going to stay that way. So seize the opportunity, because it's available to you. It's in front of you.
Definitely, I couldn't agree more with both of you. It's there. It's happening. Be a part of it.
Fantastic. Okay, well, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks,
No worries, mate. No worries at all.